Okay, welcome again. I'm Ann Russo, and I am the director of the Women's Center, and I'm also a professor in Women's and Gender Studies here at DePaul University. And it's just wonderful to see you this evening to be a part of this event with Dr. Aydah Chang, the performance of Not Quite, Asian Americans and the Other in the Era of the Pandemic and Uprisings. I'm so happy that you're here, Aydah. I so appreciate you. And I will offer more of an introduction in a few minutes. I want to thank all those who have contributed to making this event possible. So on behalf of the Women's Center, I'd like to thank American Studies, Critical Ethnic Studies, Global Asian Studies, Peace, Justice, and Conflict Studies, Sociology, and the Women's and Gender Studies Department. I'd also like to thank Belinda Andrade for creating such a beautiful flyer and doing so much to make this event possible, and is here working with us right now. And also Nina Wilson, who also helped get the word out for this event. Both Belinda and Nina work in the Women's Center, along with Amalia Samaron, Haley Curtis, and Camille Lawrence. So I also want to thank them. And I want to thank my colleague Leila Farah for bringing her class and for all the support also for this event. I want to begin by calling your attention to a few aspects of our space this evening. One, please know that the event is being recorded, and also we'll be taking some photos. So if you don't want your image to show up on these photos, then I would encourage you to turn your camera off. And if you're concerned about it, you can also contact us. Two, I want to share just a couple of the values or a few of the values that we hold in the Women's Center that we also invite you to practice this evening as part of a Women's Center space. And that is that one is to always be open to learning from ourselves and others, that we really encourage active listening and engagement with Dr. Cheng's storytelling and performance, and also with others in the space, that we respect one another's gender identities and pronouns, and that whenever we're engaging, through chat or whatever, to be mindful of and accountable for the impact of our words and actions. And finally, offering support and care for yourself and others, and that if you need to step away for a minute for whatever reason, we welcome you to do that and encourage you to do that, to take care of yourself, as well as if you have friends and peers within the space. So we also encourage you to turn off your camera whenever you want, and that we'll be opening up the chat for a conversation with Aydah after the performance. So the performance will be followed by a Q&A, and the event will close around 7:30. At the end of the event, we'll be putting up a survey, and hope you'll just fill it out to help the Women's Center as we continue to build programming at DePaul. So now I'm going to introduce Dr. Aydah Chang. So Aydah is a good friend of mine and a colleague. She's somebody I've known, I was like counting it up, I think we've known each other for 20 years, which is really amazing. Aydah was a professor at DePaul University in the sociology department for 15 years. And she was an active and contributing member of Women's and Gender Studies, and was just such a big part of our community, like an amazing teacher, an incredible researcher, event community builder, and all of those things. And so in 2016 or 15, when she told me that she was leaving DePaul, I was so sad. But then when she told me what she wanted to do and why she wanted to do it, which was to become a storyteller and to reach, many more people through her work, I just had incredible admiration for her, and I knew that she would do it, and she has. So a huge loss to DePaul, but like her work has just blossomed. And so I'm excited that you'll have a chance and an opportunity to witness that this evening. So Aydah's been featured now at many storytelling shows and solo performances in Chicago and around the country. Her two solo performances outside of this one were Not Quite, Asian American by Law, Asian Woman by Desire, that she developed in 2017. And the second, Breaking Rules, Broken Hearts, Loving Across Borders in 2018. Both profoundly compelling and moving shows. She's also the producer and host of 5 storytelling shows. So you should really look out for them. They're also amazing compilations of other storytellers and telling incredible stories and really, expanding our hearts and our imaginations and our minds. The 5 shows are Pour One Out, a monthly storytelling series, Am I Man Enough? Stories of Toxic Masculinity, Talk Stories, an Asian American Asian diaspora storytelling show, Speaking Truth series, and This is America, Truths Through My Body. In 2020, the Collaboration, I love the name of that, the Collaboration Theater Company produced Aydah's first short film, A Letter to My Younger Self, an emotionally powerful piece concerning anti-Asian racism in the time of the pandemic, and which is the focus of her performance this evening. So I hope you'll all find a way somehow through the Zoom to communicate to Aydah that we welcome you, Aydah. We're so happy that you're here, and I'll turn it over to you now. So thanks, Aydah, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. Oh my God, and you just make me cry. Have you seen anybody who hasn't started performing yet? Already like tears streaming down my cheeks, right? So yeah, 5 or 6 years ago, you would think at DePaul, this is what's called unprofessional, right? But after I left, my tears just started pouring out, just never stopped. So wow, this is just really emotional. And if I get emotional, that's just who I am. It's Aydah. So you have my permission to cry as we go on. That's totally okay, even though we're within an academic space. I think emotion is so important. It's a source of our knowledge. It's a source of our learning. Yet we systematically devalue emotion in academia. So part of the why I want to do this performance, but also why I pursue storytelling, is that how do I engage with the audience, including students, not just intellectually, but emotionally. So just let me explain. I did this original solo in 2017, January 2017. And because of the structure of the solo, it allows me to modify and update. So what you're going to hear tonight will be the update. There will be 3 stories. The first one was written in 2016. The second one would be in 2019 or early 2020. And the last one about the pandemic, more specifically, will be about 2020. And so I want to show you the progression, and this is what I'm going to do. I'm just going to perform straight through. You don't need to applaud me in between, but at the end, I simply want you to sit through, process it, and then at the end, we're going to have a conversation. So 3 stories. How's everyone doing? Are you all ready for me to start? Give me a sign, checking the temperature in the room. Very good, very good. Thank you so much. Tears are part of the journey.
Yes.
I live in Chicago. I've lived here for 20 years. Before I moved to Chicago, I was in Austin, Texas for 5 years. Before I moved to Austin, I was in Hong Kong, still a British colony at the time, for 7 months. Before I moved to Hong Kong, I was in New York for 4 months. Before I moved to New York, I was in Eugene, Oregon for 3 years. Before I moved to Eugene, I was in Taipei, Taiwan for 27 years. I was born in Taiwan 57 years ago. I came to this country 30 years ago. The last time I went back to Taiwan was 20 years ago. So where is home? How do you define it? By where you were born? By the duration of your stay? By the length of your absence? Or by the intensity of your emotions? I have lived in this country for over a quarter of a century. I still have a tough time answering questions like, are you from Chicago? Where are you from? These questions always throw me off. I have lived in different cities for different durations of time. And if you don't specify, I assume you want to know the origin of my birthplace. And for some of us, it's not a city in the United States. It's another country, another continent, and in my case, an island in the Pacific Ocean. What does home mean, really? Whenever I'm asked, where are you from? Regardless of the intention of the questioner, I'm always reminded that Chicago is not quite home. I don't quite belong. Not quite. I'm always reminded that I'm an alien, a transplant coming from somewhere easily identifiable and easily identified. Look at me, my skin color, my facial feature, my appearance, my clothing, my demeanor, my speech. Everything about me marks me. So after being a green card holder for 10 years and being an immigrant for 25 years, I finally decided to apply for American citizenship in 2015. 2 weeks after I did my citizenship interview, I received a notice from the Citizenship and Immigration Services of the Homeland Security, notifying me that my citizenship application had been approved. And my swearing ceremony was scheduled on May 27th, 2015. Do you remember May 2015? What was happening in different parts of this country, in cities like Baltimore, Los Angeles, Seattle, and Cincinnati? I'll come back to that later. My citizenship application had been smooth, except the carelessness with which USCIS staff handled my mail. They mailed out a notice without sealing the envelope, and the notice, with my full legal name, my social security number, my green card number, and my address, was sticking out of the envelope in my mailbox. Do you mind if I swear here? Are you fucking kidding me? I have been paying taxes in this country for 15 years, and you couldn't take 2 seconds to seal one of the most important documents in my life? I invited my then partner and the chair of the department at a university where I was a full-time faculty member to join me for the ceremony, DePaul University, sociology department. So on May 27th, 2015, my guests and I arrived at the USCIS building in downtown Chicago right before 1 p.m. We passed through the security check where I had to take off my shoes and I had to get rid of the tape recorder and up to the third floor where there was a huge waiting area. After waiting for half an hour, I was called to stand in line in order to move to the ceremony hall. And right at the entrance of the ceremony hall, there was a long desk and 3 agents were sitting there. When it was my turn, the first agent took my green card and the notice. The second agent examined them and threw them into a big yellow envelope. And the third agent checked my name off the list. My heart sank when I turned in my green card. This was the only legal documentation in my possession to prove that I was documented or legal in this country. I didn't bring my Illinois ID with me that day, so I didn't have any ID to show who I was. But even if I did, they wouldn't have proved my legal status. So at that moment, I was without legal documentation. I started to panic as I walked into the big hall where hundreds of immigrants like me had already been seated. It was very scary with hundreds of people without legal documentation. It was as if we were waiting for a collective sentence because theoretically, any one of us could be arrested, locked up, or deported right there and then. But deported back to where? It has been 3 decades since I left Taiwan in 1991. The last time I went back to the island was 1999. I still have family there, but it hasn't been home for 30 years. Going back there is not necessarily going home, but then where is home? My heart pounced every time I saw an agent walk toward my direction. And I kept on thinking to myself, is this a trap? Is the agent going to tell me that something was wrong with my application and they changed their mind about naturalizing me? Did they not believe me when I indicated on the application form and when I told them face to face that I never tortured anyone, I never engaged in genocide, I was never part of the Nazi government in Germany, I was never a terrorist, I was never a communist, I never intend or attempt to overthrow the US government, I was never part of a guerrilla group, I never sold weapons, I was never in prison, I never committed any felonies, I was not an alcoholic, I was not a gambler, I never abused any drugs, I never forced anyone to have sex, and I never solicit sex. I was a saint, still am one. Suddenly, I saw my former partner in the chair of my department walk into the hall and take their seat. And the USCIS director walked up to the podium and announced that we would start the ceremony. I felt a sense of relief. The citizenship ceremony included watching documentaries about US immigration history and American exceptionalism, listening to speeches, singing national anthem, and I'm not going to sing tonight because I don't torture people, pledging allegiance to the flag and receiving the certificate of naturalization. In the first documentary we watched, the narrator talked about how we, like the previous generations of the immigrants, that we were fortunate to escape war, poverty, and political and religious repressions to come to this country to pursue our American dream. I suddenly felt terrible that I invited my chair to the ceremony. You see, my chair was a 70-year-old African-American man. His ancestors didn't come to this country voluntarily. In his parents' time, people of different races were not allowed to swim in the same swimming pool. And what was happening in May 2015? Activists like Black Lives Matter have been protesting against police brutality for quite some time. Baltimore was particularly under scrutiny because of the death of Freddie Gray. War is not outside of the United States. War is right here in the United States, in our own backyard, against our own people. What was my celebration was not necessarily his to have. Even though he was very happy for me, but it was also very difficult for him to sit there and to listen to the rhetoric about American exceptionalism as a Black man. Our stories were connected, yet very different. So I did go through the citizenship ceremony and received my certificate of naturalization. And this is now the legal documentation to prove that I am a legitimate American citizen. I didn't pay attention to it when I received it. I simply locked it up in my safe without realizing I would need again a year later. This, oh, I just realized you might not be able to see. This is my certificate of naturalization. This is a real copy. So there are two numbers on it. There's this number 37439843. And there's another number, A0977A3163. Do you know what A stands for? I did not realize the significance of these two numbers until when I tried to apply for Affordable Care Act health insurance in December 2016. I was asked to provide these two numbers when I identify myself as a naturalized citizen. And that A stands for alien. That's my alien registration number. A number I carried for decades before becoming a citizen. And a number I will continue to carry. These two numbers are for registration. And there's always a registry for aliens. And every time I'm asked about them, I'm reminded of my alien status. Most people would assume that the process of naturalization enable immigrants like me, and let me be very clear, a very privileged one, to assimilate into this country, to be part of this country, and to finally be home. I have contributed to this country by educating young minds at a university for 20 years. And here is the irony. Not as a citizen, but as an immigrant. First, on my H-1B visa, and then with my green card. This country has entrusted immigrants with some of her most important jobs, including raising children, caring for the sick, cleaning houses, and educating young minds. Yet, we are forever unwelcome. As much as I try to blend in by achieving the American dream, this country, or shall I say, this government, is never going to let me forget that I am indeed an alien and will forever be one. So this is my American journey. American dreams pursued and achieved, but I'm still not home. I'm going to read a piece. So for this performance, I will tell a book, I'll read, I'll show a short form to demonstrate how we can engage storytelling, multimedia. Dear white woman, I regretted saying nothing to you, so I'm writing you this letter. It was a good day, that first Friday in October 2019. Sunny and cool. It was around 2 p.m. I just finished presenting my gender-based violence workshop at the medical school at UIC. I had started this new position with the university in July, and this workshop was the first major one I had to conduct with this new position. I was happy because I thought everything went well, so well, that the student organizers told me that they wanted me back in spring. I was feeling proud, standing in front of the medical school building entrance on Polk Street. When I ordered a lift to return to my office, you were right there dropping off someone. I was elated that I didn't have to wait long. The day is really going my way, I thought to myself. I got into your car and said, "Thank you so much. How are you?" My standard greeting to a Lyft driver. You glanced at me through the mirror and said, "I'm good. Where are you from?" Just like that. We're sitting inches from each other, yet the chasm between us suddenly feels like 1,000 miles. I paused. Where are you from is one of my most dreaded questions. I was asked so very often before becoming a citizen in 2015. It was simple when I first arrived in this country from Taiwan as an international student back in 1991. I was foreign after all, with my stronger accent then and wearing clothing I brought from home. Yet with each passing year or decade, this question has become more complicated and layered. I can no longer answer with ease. This question was posed to me even after I became a citizen in May 2015. That same afternoon, after the naturalization ceremony, and the days and the weeks and the months and the years after that, this question never stopped. Why would I have expected anything different? The certificate of naturalization, that piece of paper certifying my citizenship status, didn't change anyone's perception of me as someone from somewhere else. My status might have changed, but my face didn't. I mean, my accent wasn't that thick, so thick you would mistake me as foreign with that green tea. You had no reference other than this face of mine, the only marker of difference, just like a million faces from Asia. And when I hesitated, you asked, originally, like I didn't know what you were asking, like I didn't already have a script for this question, like I hadn't answered the same question over and over, like I hadn't said originally myself many times before, like my silence was my lack of understanding of your words or English. No, I was killing you softly in the back seat with my gaze, filled with both sorrow and rage, calculating how much I should let your remark and therefore you shape the rest of my day or days after that. When I told you I was from Taiwan, you started talking about how your brother-in-law was working there, how he loved it. I asked you which city he was working on the island. You couldn't say. You simply went on and on about his beautiful experiences in Asia. I wanted to tell you, I don't fucking care. I mean, do you even know the difference between Taiwan and Thailand? Because many Americans can't even distinguish these two countries since the first part of these two words sounds exactly the same. I wanted to lecture you about profiling though. A softer type of profiling, the type of profiling that doesn't kill us, but it marks us as different. It tells us we don't belong. It is a form of racial profiling masked as cultural curiosity, often loved by both liberals and conservatives alike, pretending to be cosmopolitan. Yet, culture is no substitute for race. You might ask, does it mean I can't ask this question at all? Of course, it is not that you can't ask it. It is how and when you ask the question. It is the context within which you ask it. Context is everything. Ask yourself, is this how you greet every human being you come across on your drive, in the party, on the street? Or do you direct this phrase to only people with certain facial features, features deemed as foreign and alien, or shall we say, exotic? There are millions of people with facial features similar to mine who were born in the United States. This is a place they call home. They are not from somewhere else. They have always been here. By asking them that question, you're telling them they don't fit the image of what an American should be. Where are you from? Marx, someone as an outsider, outside of a norm and a standard against which you used to judge them. I'm the other, against the white faces you count as American. Whether I was born somewhere else is beside the point. I might be a citizen on paper, but it is still a long way to belong and to call this country home, even after 3 decades. Let me tell you a story. I once performed my solo nakwai at Des Moines, Iowa. During the talkback, a middle-aged white woman vehemently disputed my comment about the racial implications of this phrase. She insisted that she could not be racist since her husband, sitting right next to her, was a Chinese man from Hong Kong. It was as if her physical proximity to a person of color could excuse or exonerate her of any bias or prejudice. She said that she was simply curious about other cultures. Insisting on her good intentions, she wouldn't stop arguing until another white audience asked her to ponder this question: who is in the rightful place to define racism? I believe you, if you say you were simply trying to be friendly. Except benevolent intentions don't always matter, especially when they lead to harmful impact. Not on you, but on me. It should have been a great day for me. Instead, I spent the 7-minute ride debating if I should get out of the car for my dignity, if saving $5 was worth my dignity, if I should educate you as opposed to simply enjoying my existence, if I should trade dignity for convenience, if I should stay quiet while struggling with my own conscience and doubting if I did the right thing with my silence. All the energy that should have been reserved for my joy that day was wasted on you, while you were completely oblivious to everything. I used to intervene until my energy was completely drained, until I no longer had joy in life. And then I realized this: not every fight should be my fight. I have to pick my battle just to preserve some sanity, so I can thrive, not just survive. So I sulked in my back seat and decided that I would write you a letter entitled, "Dear White Woman." I consider this piece your compensation for my short ride with you. Best, Aydah. So I'm going to show a short film, and in the letter form, it's called A Letter to My Younger Self.
Dear university staff, hello. I want to report an
Just want to double check, is the sound okay? Volume okay? And Belinda, is it about okay? Very good.
Yes.
insulting incident that happened to us today. My friends and I were at this building trying to grab some coffee. We were waiting in line, and finally, when it was our turn to order, we stepped forward. During that short time, we heard an absurd racist joke that people at the cashier made, saying, "Watch out for the coronavirus." As everybody knows, the coronavirus is a global issue that has taken away more than 500 innocent lives. Treating us as that virus is both humiliating and insulting to the people who are suffering and fighting for that contagious disease. It is very unfortunate that this occurred during the Black History Month, the month that we all believe everybody should not be discriminated by the color of their skin. I hope you examine this issue. We sincerely want an apology for this inconvenience. Sincerely, student.
Dear student, thank you for your message. I'm very sorry this happened to you. I would like to meet in person to discuss the situation further. Let me know when you can stop by. Aydah.
Dear Aydah, thank you for your kindness. We were all furious about that incident. However, after knowing that there are people who actually care for minorities like us, it gives us pride, knowing that we chose to come to this school. Again, thank you for offering us options to deal with this matter, but we have decided not to make a scene. Student.
Dear student, I don't think you will ever read this message. I do hope at some point you will tell the story on your own. I haven't been able to sleep for days since I received your email. That last sentence, "we have decided not to make a scene," hit me hard. That sentence has filled me with sadness. It feels like someone has driven a knife slowly into my heart. I'm not going to die from it, but my heart aches and bleeds with each gentle cut and push. Your message was the first complaint I received, but it was not the first one I have heard. Since the outbreak of the coronavirus, we have seen an increase of hatred toward Chinese people, people of Asian descent, or Asian Americans in general. Physical assaults have taken place, racial slurs hurled, suspicious looks cast, masks put on specifically when Asian people are present. Otherwise, socially conscious people making jokes and references about the virus and Chinese people. Businesses in Chinatown plummeted due to misinformation, xenophobia, and racism. In a world where racism is often seen between black and white, discrimination, prejudice, racism, and xenophobia toward and against Asians are often taken for granted and normalized, that even UC at Berkeley briefly posted something online along the line. Xenophobia is a normal response after the outbreak. Our own president insisted on calling the virus Chinese or Wuhan virus, knowing fully well that a pandemic will bring out pre-existing hatred, xenophobic sentiments, and racist assaults against people of Asian descent. Different universities sent warning emails to students about the virus, yet very few made public statements denouncing anti-Asian racism. We don't label any germ, disease, illness, or virus white when they wiped out Native American tribes. Why do we label coronavirus Asian? This pandemic shows how easily we, as Asian Americans, can go from being model minority to yellow peril in this country within seconds. But what I want to write here is not about the virus. It is about that last sentence of yours. We have decided not to make a scene. I truly see you because you remind me of my younger self. When I used to believe that people would understand where I was coming from and empathize with my position if I were polite enough, respectful enough, articulate enough, or liked enough. And then it dawned on me one day. My degree of politeness, respectfulness, or likability has little to do with whether people can grasp the complexity of issues. For many, they understand them all alone. In my or our culture, I was taught since I was young to be quiet, to not speak up, to not challenge authorities, and to keep peace and maintain harmony. I had to work very hard to develop my own voice and to have one. When I was younger, I tried hard to balance between having a voice and wanting to be liked, having ideas and opinions and being seen too opinionated and loud, and telling people how I really felt and what I really thought, and not wanting to alienate anyone with my truth. I still struggle with that. And I'm in my 50s. The reality is, there's no balance. It is a lose-lose situation for me as a woman. I do have the benefit of racial perception. I'm hardly seen as militant or aggressive as an Asian woman, even when I am, compared to a Black woman who can easily be seen as aggressive even when she is simply being assertive. My body, as much as it may be sexually objectified, exoticized, or violated, is not seen as threatening, thus allowing me to freely navigate the world without anyone calling the police on me. And we know the ways our bodies are perceived can have life and death consequences. But the worst part is this. When you don't practice speaking up for yourself, you end up losing the only voice you have, your own. I want you to remember this. Silence can be a strength, but it isn't always a virtue. Being quiet doesn't always bring you peace. Being polite doesn't always keep you out of trouble. Being respectful doesn't always get you the respect in return. Please, learn to tell your own story, as I can't always tell stories for others. Learn to shout on top of your lung. Make a scene. Be the troublemaker. Be the trouble for yourself and others. It's time. It's time. Aydah.